being seen, being heard, is makes all the difference to, in fact, all of us. One thing that you'd like to say that, you've got maximum from the children.
Love. I think it's become my most important value, and I think I learned it from children. Children are incredible. Very early on, something felt very unfair in the world. And so what I did at the age of 12 is I started volunteering. And I think volunteering for me through all my summers with different groups of children, with animals as well, was very, very formative in making me realize that I loved to serve. I loved working with children. It gave me a lot of joy. And I was able to do something in my own tiny way to make the world a little bit more fair. Indian Constitution, we have the four most beautiful values in the world, I think: liberty, equality, fraternity, justice. If we can live by those values, practice those values, think about one thing we want to make better in the world, and then take that first step. I found the power of a first step is incredible. You'll find the next step, but just take the first step towards something you believe in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Happiness Hour. Here we talk about different perspectives of happiness that people have. But most importantly, what I've seen, there's a common thread of giving. And that is what we are here to talk about today, with someone who's been committed to giving for the last few decades. I have with me today Shaheen Mistri, a social activist and global leader par excellence. She is the founding board member and CEO of Teach for India. She has earned global recognition for her dedication and commitment to the fight for education in society. Passionate about education and the underprivileged, she has started the Akanksha Center in 1989, which has, over the last 25 years, expanded extensively across Mumbai and Pune. Shaheen is also a fellow, Ashoka Fellow, a global leader for tomorrow at the World Economic Forum, an Asia Society 21 leader, and she serves on several boards. Her commitment to education is seen across society. Thank you very much for joining us, Shaheen, and welcome to our show.
Thank you.
The first question that comes to mind, Shaheen, is that, in a society where people are chasing personal ambition and success, at the young age of 18, you decided to step away and chart a different path for yourself by setting up Akanksha. What inspired you to take such a bold step?
So, I think firstly at 18, it's much easier to take bold steps because at least I was a much more risk-taking, rebellious person at that age. But I think for me, it was many things. It was living abroad, having a lot of opportunity myself, and yet traveling back to India every summer, and seeing a very big contrast between the kind of opportunities and schooling I had and the children I would see in low-income communities and on the streets in India. So I think very early on, something felt very unfair in the world. And so what I did at the age of 12 is I started volunteering. And I think volunteering for me through all my summers with different groups of children, with animals as well, was very, very formative in making me realize that I loved to serve. I loved working with children. It gave me a lot of joy. And I was able to do something in my own tiny way to make the world a little bit more fair. And so I think all of that came together. And then at 18, I was at Tufts University and again visiting in the summer after my first year, visiting India. And I was stopped at a traffic light one day, and a few kids ran up to the window of the taxi. And I think in that moment, I just questioned why I was going back when there was so much that needed to be done in India. And it was really an instinct more than anything else that I that I acted on, and I feel very grateful that I chose to act on that in that moment.
Wow. Giving up tufts for wanting to help the children. Thank you very much for really taking that very courageous, instinctive step. Uh, you multiplied the impact from Akanksha to Teach for India. Can you describe your journey a little briefly from Akanksha to Teach for India?
Sure. So I was at Akanksha for 17 years. They were some of the best years of my life. I feel like I got to know and fall in love with many, many, many children who I learned a lot from. And I saw them over those 17 years really grow up and change in very transformational ways because of education. And when I say that, I mean not just change themselves, but live better lives themselves and want to make the lives of others better and want to build the nation more. And so, really, 17 years down the line, the question for me was, how do we do this at scale? Knowing that education is a depth endeavor, it takes many years, and it's very, very hard for any one of us to unleash our fullest potential. The Akanksha kids gave me the confidence to ask, how do I do this at scale? And I think that question is what took me on a search, which led me to the Teach for America model that had started 20 years before Teach for India in the US. And what I loved about that model was the answer that Wendy, the founder, had to the question of how do you end educational inequity was you build enough leaders that want to solve that problem. And that idea that leadership is at the crux and core of everything. And if you build enough leadership dedicated to a specific issue, you are going to see traction and change happen in that issue. That felt very compelling to me. So with that basic idea in my head, I said, let's start Teach for India, which would be a 2-year full-time teaching fellowship for people that actually had never considered teaching. These were some of the best, brightest, most committed young people across the country, recent college grads, but also people working in corporate India. And the idea was if you brought them in and put them in a challenging classroom with low-income children for 2 years full-time, that they would develop enough both anger at the way things are because there's so many challenges in our school, but hope and possibility for the opportunities that we can create for children, that they would actually post the 2 years, stay in education and the development sector long term. So that's really what we aim to do with Teach for India.
So you've had a two-pronged, if I look at it, there are two sides to this story. On one hand, you are a catalyst for attracting the best into this program. On the other hand, there are challenges. What is it that attracts the best, and what are the challenges you face in attracting the best, if I had to really look at it both ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea itself has attracted the right people. I think when you authentically stand up and say, are you ready for a challenge? The country needs you. India's children need you. The way to unleash the potential of India is to unleash the potential of every single one of our children. Um, I think the right people come forward. So I think that's part of it. I think the second part is right from the beginning, even though teaching in a government school is probably one of the least aspirational things for a bright young person to do. We flipped it on its head and we said, no, let's make it the most aspirational thing. Let's keep it really selective because we genuinely believe that it is the best, brightest, most committed people that need to stand up to shape our country. And I think counterintuitively, when you make something selective and aspirational, it self-selects the right people. So that's what I think we did to attract the right people. And then, of course, it's not just about bringing in people that want to do this. It's about really equipping them with the skills to have impact in very challenging environments. And so our fellows experience classrooms where learning gaps are massive. You can enter a grade 8 classroom and kids will not be reading at a grade 1, grade 2 level. But not just learning gaps, they see almost a microcosm of Indian society in their classroom. They may experience their kids being abused, humiliated, unemployment of parents, health issues, malnutrition, all kinds of challenges that get in the way of learning. And on average, our fellows are 22, 23 years old, and schools are severely under-resourced to be able to help with this breadth of challenges. So the combination of falling in love with their children and trying to address these challenges, I think, leads to very rapid transformation of not just the children, but the fellows themselves and growth in their own leadership.
Yeah, it is heart-wrenching to be dealing and working with children who are literally at the bottom rung facing so much of issues and yet empowering them. You've obviously worked with various collaborations, partnerships to achieve your vision because you've expanded extensively. How did you garner those partnerships, and how have can you tell us a little more about the stories, the lessons from all of that?
Yeah, one is, I think, just something I believe very deeply in is that individuals matter, but they don't matter that much. It's really the collective that can drive any kind of change. So I think personally, I'm very curious to learn, to work with others, to bring people together. And that's been a journey that I have been on myself, and I think the organization has been on. So we've worked with many, many people, I think, from other schools, our placement schools and other private schools that we have learned a lot from. We've worked with a lot of experts because we have a lot of young people at Teach for India who have a lot of idealism, a lot of energy, but maybe not a lot of lived experience. So we've brought in a lot of people on the training side, on the evaluation side. We've learned from the Teach for All network. So Teach for All is the learning network that we are a part of, and there are 64 countries that have similar models with contextualization to their own country. So there's been a lot of learning from Teach for All and the different countries there, and then there's been a lot of learning in our own alumni community. So today we have 5,000 fellows that have completed the 2-year program. And they collectively have set up 160 organizations. Many of the organizations today are close to, if not larger than Teach for India itself. So there's a lot of learning from each other within the community itself.
So it's literally it's an ecosystem which has mushroomed in a really big way.
Yeah, so 5,000 alums who are collectively transforming the lives of 100,000 children, but indirectly reaching about 50 million kids across the country. So it really is a very powerful multiplier, the idea, because for the 2 years, you sort of put your head down and really go deep with one group of kids. But then as alumni, we have alumni working with government, policy, large-scale teacher training, foundational literacy, ed tech, right down to staying in the classroom as classroom teachers.
So the ripple effect is tremendous. So, if you had to look 20 years ahead, what next would you see for yourself, Teach for India, and if you had to say at the national level, what can I do next?
Yeah, so I don't look 20 years ahead, but
Okay, 10, whatever, 5, 10, you
8-year
tell.
goal now, which we set about 2 years ago, is actually just one North Star that the whole organization is focused on, and that is to build a movement of 50,000 leaders who work collectively with love to transform the lives of 1 in 10 children in and around the regions we serve. So that's our sort of big guiding headline North Star. And what that will look like is growing the fellowship that we have been running for the last 15 years, but also running a range of other leadership development programs for existing teachers, for children while they're still in school, for government officials and others.
So you are obviously, your time, your life is devoted to this. What else are you passionate about that gives you joy?
Nice question. So I have many, many, many interests. So this is a could be a very long answer, but I'll give you the short answer. I'm passionate about animals. Actually, the only real choice point in my life was whether I should work with stray dogs and cats or whether I should work with children. So I have two dogs at home who I adore. I'm also passionate about art. So I started painting about 4 years ago. But I love any form of the arts. I've worked on 6 musicals over my career with children. I'm passionate about teaching. I know that's connected to work, but not really connected to my role as a CEO. But I continue to teach children and draw a lot of energy from that. I'm really passionate about travel. I think that comes from my own background. I grew up in 10 schools in 5 countries, so I continue to learn a lot and be very curious about different people and places. I play the piano, very passionate about music, done a little bit of songwriting as well. So, yeah, many, many different things.
Wow, multifaceted and very curious and definitely youthful is what I would say is what you stay with the children. I think that's what keeps that energy bubbling, which I can absolutely experience here. Um, you know, when you say you want to go more deeper into the ecosystem and work with government officials, policies, other things, if you look at the children also, the challenges they face from, like you talked about, nutrition, abuse. Is there some other cause that you've added or taken on to, how do you bring the children to continue the learning to continue? So it's a, it's not a single point that you can, just bring them into the classroom. So I'm really saying, okay, what is it that keeps that going, system going for you?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. And honestly, there's so much more work to be done in this area. But essentially what we do is rely on a lot of partnerships. So in all of our cities, for example, child protection is a very big issue in schools. Like there's a lot of abuse of kids from school teachers, from parents. So we would tie up with organizations that specialize in child protection. If there's a problem with nutrition with kids, we would try to bring that in. If the school has no facility for reading, you'll often find fellows setting up a reading room. So we leverage a lot of partnerships. You see a lot of crowd funding campaigns going out at Teach for India to raise money either for a child who's unwell or a family member of a child who's struggling. So it really is the community trying to do their best as situations come up. And yet it just isn't enough. We don't have enough partnerships. We can't service all our kids' needs fast enough. We often don't have control in our schools of particular issues as well. So we have to function within the confines of what the school also wants us to do. So it's not perfect, but I think at the base of everything, a fellow is always willing to listen to a child to create a safe space. And I think that makes a huge difference, even if we can't solve the problem of a child, for a child to know that they have the unconditional love and support of an adult in their life makes a huge, huge difference. And we've actually seen a lot shift because of that.
Yeah, so true. Being seen, being heard, is makes all the difference to, in fact, all of us. Um, one thing that you'd like to say that, you've got maximum from the children.
Love. I think it's become my most important value, and I think I learned it from children. Children are incredible. Like if your lesson isn't strongly planned enough, or you lose your temper in class, the next day you come in and they run to you and they hug you and dee, and you see their smiles and they just have a way of radiating presence and love and joy. And I think that's what I've most taken from children.
One thing that you'd like to tell the youth of India or the world so we can
I
have
think
more in your space.
Yeah, I think do a lot, do as much as you can to make the world better. I think in our Indian constitution, we have the four most beautiful values in the world, I think: liberty, equality, fraternity, justice. If we can live by those values, practice those values, think about one thing we want to make better in the world, and then take that first step. I found the power of a first step is incredible. You'll find the next step, but just take the first step towards something you believe in. And above all, just be kind to the people around you, and treat others the way that you would wish to be treated.
Thank you so much. That really says it all. Kindness matters, and especially in today's world. So thank you once again, Shaheen, for being with us. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.